Next is understand the way in which the mind works and the principles of effective thinking. Have a clear framework for decision making. Be aware of the relationship between decision making and problem solving. Be able to use a unified model for both making decisions and solving problems. Have sharpened up your creative thinking skills. Be in a position to chart a way forward for improving your thinking skills across the board. So it is not restricting to one level. So multiple levels are there as far as the thinking is concerned. And for decision making, understand the way in which mind works and the principles of effective thinking. So what sort of decision that you are going to take and how it is going to create an impact, and to make it productive and without waste of time or energy, how it is to be utilized. So effective thinking is equally important. Have a clear framework for decision making, the purpose for which the decision is being made and how it is going to be implemented and what are the sources that is required. All these things should be taken into consideration for having a clear framework of decision making. Be aware of the relation between decision making and problem solving. So try to identify the connection between decision making and problem solving. So a decision is being taken to solve a problem, and what are all the steps to be taken to solve the problem after doing an analysis, finding the root cause and what solution is needed and what time frame is required and what are the sources that has to be utilized. All these things has to be seen and be able to use a unified model for both making decisions and solving problem. So unified model, or try to find a model or identify a model that should match making decision as well as solving the problem. Have sharpened up your creative thinking skills. So the creative thinking should be sharpened up in such a manner positive output or results are expected. Be in a position to chart a way forward for improving thinking skill across the board. So how the plan can be executed, or what sort of plan is required to improve the thinking skill and applying it abroad or abroad. Next, your brain and mind. Behind your practical everyday thinking, there lies the most complex thinking in the unknown, the human mind. Nobody hires and pays you nowadays for your physical strength. You are employed because you have a mind and can use it effectively. There is vital distinction between brain and mind. So the vital distinction between brain and mind has to be seen as the key element. There are two aspects to the mind: the information it can store in the memory and what it can do. What we call technical or professional knowledge usually involves both. You are not only need knowledge about a subject, but you also need to be able to apply it in a variety of unforeseen situations. So mind versus brain comparison. So let us try to do an experiment. Using a right index finger, point to your brain. Now using the same finger, point to your mind. Not so easy. We don't necessarily think of our brain and mind as being exactly the same thing. One is not as easy to pinpoint, and this has led to two distinct ways we have of talking about mental activity: mind talk and brain talk. To those of us without a degree in neurobiology, it seems completely natural to refer to the mind. We talk about feeling this way and thinking of that, of remembering one thing and dreaming of another. Those verbs are examples of mind talk. Using mind talk, we would say, I recognized my first grade teacher in the crowd because she was wearing the necklace with the beetle crab, which was so unusual. I still remembered it after all these years. We would not say a barrage of photons landed on my retina, exciting the optic nerve so that it carried an electrical signal to my lateral geniculate body and hence to my primary visual cortex, from which signals raised to my striate cortex to determine the image's color and orientation, and to my professional cortex and inferotemporal cortex for object recognition and memory retrieval, causing me to recognize Mrs. McKinley. That is brain talk. That there is an interplay between mind and brain may seem unremarkable. The mind, after all, is generally regarded as synonymous with our thoughts, feelings, memories, and beliefs, and as the source of our behaviors. It is not made of material, but we think it is as quite powerful or even as who we are. The mind, after all, is generally regarded as synonymous with our thoughts, feelings, memories, and beliefs, and as a source of our behaviors. It is not made of material, but we think it is a quite powerful or even as who we are. The brain, the 3-pound slab of tofu textured tissue inside our skull, is recognized as the physical source of all that we call mind. If you are having a thought or experiencing an emotion, it is because your brain has done something. Specifically, electrical signals crackled along a whole bunch of neurons, and those neurons handed off droplets of neurochemicals like runners handing off a baton in a relay race. Neuroscientists don't object to mind talk for casual conversation, but most insist that we not invoke the mind as if it is real or distinct from the brain. They reject the notion that the mind has an existence independent of the brain, often called Cartesian dualism after René Descartes of I think therefore I am fame. Obviously, avoiding mind talk would be a problem for a column about the science of the mind in a magazine called Mindful. I feel full of the no mind rule last year during a talk I gave in Salt Lake City on neuroplasticity, the ability of the adult brain to change its structure and function in response to outside stimuli as well as internal activity. I was talking about mind-changing brain, a possibility that intrigues scientists who have investigated the power and effects of mental training, including mindfulness. I used examples such as people with obsessive compulsive disorder, not so fast, practicing mindfulness to approach the thoughts differently, with the result that the brain region whose over activity caused their disorder quieted down. As per mind-changing brain. Not so fast, said one audience member. Why talk about something so imprecise, even spooky as mind? Why can't explain for the OCD patients be that one form of brain activity that taking place during mindfulness affected another, said the concerned. Well, we need mind talk because although most neuroscientists reject the idea of a mind different from brain, most civilians embrace the distinction. This completing or competing view of things gets expressed in the real world in stark and startling ways. Take, for example, how the mind-brain dichotomy can play out in the criminal justice system. Neuroscience holds that the brain is the organ of the mind. If sometimes goes wrong with the behavior, then it is because something has gone wrong with the brain. In the same way that if something has gone wrong with, say, insulin secretion, it is because something has gone wrong with the pancreas. We can probably all agree that criminal assault and downloading child pornography both count as something going wrong with behavior. Yet in these and other cases, judges presented with evidence that their behavior had biological basis have meted out more lenient sentences than in cases where no such evidence was presented. To which neuroscientists reply, are you out of your mind? Why are you relying on such a distinction? What else is behavior but the result of brain biology? Yet the fact that criminals are treated more harshly if their mind, motives, anger, antisocial feelings made them do it than if their brain, aberrant activity patterns, pathological circuitry, etc. did show just how deeply average folks believe in that mind and brain are distinct. This dualism gets a profound philosophical issue that has divided scholars for decades. What is the most productive and helpful level of explanation for mental activity? When do we go too far in reducing mental matters to physically observable activity? Is it more illuminating? For instance, to explain why Teresa loves Devi by invoking their personalities and histories and tastes, or their brain neurons. Consider trying to explain confirmation bias, in which people remember examples that support their point of view. You never take out the garbage and forget counter examples. Is it more illuminating to explain it as the result of the human need to shore up our beliefs, or by invoking synapses and neurochemicals? One case for mind talk is that we have access to our mind. We can recognize and describe what we know, remember, and think. We do not have access to our brain. We cannot tell which regions, my hippocampus, my anterior cingulate, are active during particular activities. One case for mind talk is that we have access to our mind. We can recognize and describe what we know, remember, and think. But many neurologists say mind talk is just hand waving. As a result, you can hardly call yourself a psychologist or neuroscientist, cognitive, affective, social, or otherwise, unless your research uses brain imaging. So the mind-brain debate is not about to go away anytime soon. So in this column, we'll be keeping an eye on the dialogue between brain talkers and mind talkers, and to keep exploring what this science has to teach us about our minds and our brains. Behind your practical everyday thinking, there lies most complex thinking and the known factor, that is the human mind. So for example, brain biology alone define, predict, or explain the emergence of mental phenomena. And the study says that behavior and psychology has asked what kind of scientists are willing to talk about mind and to what extent. What qualifies as proof that a practice like mindfulness is improving our lives? Are scientists finding ways to make mind talk like thought and emotion more rigorous, so we don't have to be embarrassed around them when we talk that way? And above all, how can scientists feel or learning about both mind and brain help us make our way a little better in a challenging world with the tools we have available, whatever names we choose to call them?